Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the speakers and the moderator of the session. I call it now moderator because he has said that I'm the moderator. So welcome Manoj. As I wanted to introduce to the chairman to the session. Manoj, without taking much time, over to you, Manoj.
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, Shashiji and Bharat Exhibition, to continue this series even after much disruption happening in the life of everybody. I will just go to the an introduction in the context setting before we go to the presenter, each of the presenter. The, the challenges are huge in front of us, but so is our conviction to overcome. Problems are plenty, so are our commitment to crush them. Time and again, humanity proved that we can overcome any crisis. The vaccine developed in 6 months instead of 6 years time cycle is a great example of what we can do once we are united and have some vision. The world was never so chaotic, disruptive, and yet connected. It's because of telecom and ICT sectors that the whole world remained connected despite one of the worst crises in our times. Pandemic has accelerated the already legislation programs further. In the emerging digital era of hyper-connected world, everything will be driven through software except human beings. And who knows, even human beings will be driven through software in futures to come. Creative imagination is what motivates us forward, expands new horizons, brings new ideas and inventions. The technology is evolving with blazing speed, and life cycle of the technology is shortening with every new version of technology coming in. With the scorching speed of digitization, most of the technologies are entering into exponential curve, and convergence of technology is going to cause industry disruption in virtually every sector of the world. Advances in computing are making many things possible with the aid of AI and machine learning. The increased internet penetration is likely to fuel the use of smart devices, IoT. The impact of collaborative platforms, we have already seen people working from distributed areas instead of metros and mini metros. They have gone to the urban and semi-rural areas. And the kind of internet usage I have seen within my organization, I mean, what we were serving earlier, what we are serving is there is a difference of 5 times in 5 months' time. Nobody could imagine this kind of scale which we could withstood. The data centers are going to be digital factory of new digitized world. There are many factors which are likely to fuel the data centers further. The hyper digitization of society, which is already happening, the sovereignty control of data produced in the country, digitization of offices, files, land records, and all. The cloudification of telecom networks will unleash the new driver for data centers, upscaling the smart city, digital surveillance by law enforcement agencies, and so on. Emergence of hyper digital era, business centricity are focusing to go back to drawing board to redraw data center strategy. In fact, I would like to quote two cases without naming the organizations. One with big private sector, in fact, the biggest private sector bank of country had huge issues few days back. And then global OTT player had complete collapse of network few days earlier. So what I'm saying that we don't have a single strategy. There has to be a framework, evolving framework, because it looks that everybody is going through a transition phase, whether it's smaller or bigger or biggest. The government policies and regulatory bodies are key enablers to drive growth. And we all of know that as per the recent announcements, government wants to make India as hub of data center of Asia. Data centers will be catalyzing knowledge economy and would be foundation for many pillars of society to thrive upon. With this, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Priyesh Sankaran. In the data-centric world, the data centers are expected to be agile, scalable, maintainable from compute, storage, and connectivity perspective. Mr. Priyesh Sankaran, who is Manager, Field Application Engineer, India and SARC for Comscope, is focused on data center solution and automated infra management. SARC and India. Priyesh is a cloud fiber specialist, supporting hyperscale and enterprise DC customers in this region. He is a certified data center specialist by EPI, has 20 plus years experience in ICT industry with several customer-facing roles in business development, product management, design, and technology and consulting. Priyesh will be presenting his side of story for agile, simply reliable, and adaptable data centers. Over to Mr. Priyesh.
Thank you so much, Manoj, for that introduction. Attending the event. We heard some great session in the morning about what's happening in the data centers today. I'd like to take a few minutes to explain to you what's coming up in the future, since CommScope is actively involved in standardization of some of the networking standards that you're seeing going to be installed, are already getting installed in some of the large data centers. As we already know, standardization of 400 gig networks are already happening as we speak, and is getting deployed in some of the large data centers. So I'm going to talk about what it is required for most of these data centers that you're actually building, you're designing. What are the key considerations, and then give you an overview of what's really the market as a whole itself. So I hope everybody can see my screen and can also hear me, I hope.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So if you see this, let's understand the market segments that we are seeing today across the globe, also in India, which is one of the fastest growing markets. So you see there are three segments basically of data center: hyperscale, the large cloud scale companies, and which basically most of the enterprises are basically becoming cloud ready. And the third segment is one of the fastest growing segments, which is MTDCs, or multi-tenant data centers, specifically offering retail and wholesale data center services. If you see, hyperscale is really the torch bearer, or one of the innovators, basically, who is driving a lot of technology adoption. They're really setting the pace for direction in which the data center optics and systems are developed, and most of the enterprise and service provider customers are also looking at the innovations that hyperscale is bringing into the data center and adopting them itself. As we all know, we heard about it, we're seeing a lot of proliferation of cloud scale architectures in the data centers today. And across enterprises, either in-house, either private cloud or public cloud or a hybrid cloud, we are seeing an adoption and proliferation happening there. MTDCs are really the fastest growing segment. And the reason for that is that both hyperscales and enterprise customers are going to these MTDCs for these services, instead of having to build their own. And especially when things like edge data centers is really driving the last mile connectivity, and MTDCs are able to offer a quick and faster means of providing these services. Another key area that we're seeing is the technology adoption cycle. Not every customer is really going to start adopting something just because it's becoming a trend. Everybody has their own flow as we speak. And as you can see here, the slides are slightly not in order, but just try to navigate you through the slides. So if you see here, the hyperscale is basically one of the torch bearers, or one of the leaders in basically adoption of technology across the market. And they're closely followed by the large cloud scale in terms of adoption of next generation speeds, next generation of cloud platforms, and compute platforms itself, right? So, and followed by the medium-sized MTDCs, the telco service providers, and also then the small and medium businesses, to say the least. So typically the adoption cycle is anyway starting from 3 months always almost like 36 months. So and there is no hard and fast rule, and every customer has its own legacy and design to think about, and environments to think about before moving and migrating. And that's why migration is such a serious and important strategic discussion that you need to have. But it's important to see what is coming in the future, so that accordingly you can strategize what is required for you to look at it into the next step itself. So if you see here, we all know what's happening today. Data centers are becoming the core of any communication infrastructure that you're seeing. The traffic basically invariably lands into some form of a data center. And if you see here, the communication from human to machines is basically in comparison to the machine-to-machine communication is extremely skewed now. You're seeing 5% of the overall data center traffic basically is human and machine. And that is also considering virtual reality that's happening, online gaming that is happening, online shopping that is happening. But that still constitutes a very small segment of traffic as compared to the 95%, which is basically machine to machine, especially in specific areas like high frequency trading or even edge computing that we're seeing. A lot of traffic that is happening is within the infrastructure itself. What I was trying to highlight here is that a leaf and spine architecture needs to be required for such kind of network infrastructure. So leaf, when you say leaf and spine, it's basically having a layer of access layer switch connectivity, which is all reconnected back to a spine layer, and the spine layers coming from various data center pods or data center clusters are going back into a centralized super spine switching layer. And each of these designs are such that the fabrics are designed to have equal performance. There is no performance degrade in any of the channels or segments of this network. It's a completely elastic design that we are seeing. And that is suited for east-west traffic, which is machine-to-machine traffic. And that's the key thing, right? 95% of the traffic is basically happening within the data center. The other key aspect is redundancy. The single component failure is basically something which we are seeing that does not matter today in the data center, because there is some form of redundancy that's built in terms of paths, in terms of components, network devices, additional switch ports, virtualization of servers basically. So the entire server hardware or a group of clusters of servers fail, it does not matter because it's all read and write into another cluster or group of servers itself. So in essential, that is the crux of what I wanted to explain in this slide. Technology is growing pretty fast than what we anticipated. Some of the fellow speakers in the morning session mentioned that we have taken a long while to reach here. But what I'm seeing is that the pace has picked up. Everybody is now trying to look into cutting edge, trying to adopt, trying to reduce that learning curve. And that's what is happening in the compute side as well. If you see, the servers today are having artificial intelligence accelerators in their chip design. So from the CPUs, we are moving into the GPUs. We are already seeing FPGAs, field programmable grid arrays for ASIC design specific for applications. And then Google developed their own TPU architecture, which is also which is also called as Tensor Processing Unit, which is the next generation in terms of artificial learning, machine learning, that basically is driving a lot of these analytics-based services that data centers are rolling out. Now, when you're talking about a compute platform, you need to have amount of speed that basically, from a network perspective, the communication from server to server is not bottlenecked. And that's where you see today 10 gig, 25 gig, 40 gig, 50 gig. Already we are talking about 100 and 200 gig speeds on the server side itself, which means that your backbone needs to be anything in excess of 400 gig. And that is something which is basically making us believe. If you see the chart here, right from 2020, we are already seeing 25 gig and 50 gig server shipments. And that's kind of going to increase towards 22 and 23. So that's what I said, the adoption is becoming very fast. Now, while that is happening on the server end side, switch ASICs or application-specific integrated circuits like the Broadcom's Tomahawk, the first of its kind, developed a 12.8 terabit chipset, which basically now means that the switch is now has higher radix. By that I mean more connections from a single switch. So instead of having multiple hops, as you can see in the graphics below, multiple hops in terms of a earlier generation, which was basically 6.4 terabit switch, you need to have 3 hops basically in achieving the same communication, which means that it used to basically be greater than a microsecond of delay or latency, which is a key aspect. With the next generation Tomahawk chipsets, you're going to increase the radix, and in that way it basically lowers the latency, because now we can have more connections directly into the switch rather than having to have multiple switches in there as well. So this is kind of greatly increasing the performance. It's reducing the cost per port by almost 75%, and the power consumption is dramatically reduced as well. So this is what we are going to see the trend going forward, because already there is 25.6 terabyte, which is the 800 gig per port kind of switching technology which is going to come up. followed by 51.2. So this is the kind of drive that we are seeing very quickly. It is not going to be taking the next decade to basically jump to these changes. And that's why data centers today need to start planning for multiple iterations as we see here. I'd like to jump to a specific architecture here. So if you see, in this case, a single 400 gig switch, which is on the top, can provide up to 256 connections of 50 gig, which means that every port I can actually connect up to 8 servers of 50 gig and or 4 servers of 400 gig, of 100 gig, sorry, or 200 gig. So what it's essentially saying is that this is becoming like an ecosystem wherein the iterations could be anywhere from 25 to 50 to 100 on the server side. The backbones could be supporting all the way from 400 gig and beyond. And tomorrow when the architecture comes into 800 gig, as we are already seeing the driving happening there, you'll see 100 gig servers being supported in the same fashion without any, it's like a mirror image. Only thing, the speeds have basically changed in the bottom graphic kind of. So now with all this, your architecture plays a very important role, because you simply do not have the room now to keep disrupting your infrastructure to support higher speeds. You need to have something which is seamless and ability to basically drive multiple iterations as we talk about. You see here in this case, a basic data center row now will have centralized switching architectures, more like a row-based architectures, more like the middle of the row is becoming very common in the hyperscale world. And this is something enterprises are already looking and already deploying in their own ways. So that becomes that much easier. And then you would have network connectivity and patch panels and fiber raceways on top, which will be able to provide or provision connectivity to any server inside the cabinet in that particular row. That's the kind of architecture we are talking about, and that's how basically seamlessly your active refreshes can be met tomorrow with this basically change with this kind of architecture designs. So switch specifically has a potential of up to 192 server connections as we speak. Let's look at the connection types. So if you see here, while that is happening on the network side in terms of the transceiver optics, that's kind of having an impact on the type of connectors that you're using in the data center. For many years, we've basically been using LC connectors, and we have been seeing a lot of usage of multi-push-on connectors, the MPO connectors in the data center space. LC is still the single largest connector in the data center today. But with the next generation optics, we call it as a very small form factor of connectors designs, you're going to see a change, and that's already being seen here. So you already see from a multi-fiber connector perspective, multi as in more fiber connection per connector, you're seeing already 8 and 12 fibers per connector MPO solution. We are already seeing double density, which is MPO 24 and MPO 16, which is coming here as well. And these basically essentially means that your data center, now you have the choice of taking the right strategy, whether you need more fibers per connector or you would want to have a 16 fiber kind of design, which is a new MPO design that is coming in. So significant change that is happening there. We are already supplying some of the solutions into some of our leading customers. And if you see here in the single fiber connectors, there are already 2 sets of connectors that have come up. One is the CS connector, which is basically in the same form factor as an LC. I can now have 2 CS connectors. And then you have the SN or the MDC connectors, which are basically similar form factor as the QSFP design, but which can now have 4 connectors of duplex, which is basically 8 fibers, as you can see here. So that's the kind of complexity or the compactness that is coming up in the connectors, essentially to meet the density designs, to meet the next generation data center requirements itself. So this is something which we hope to see in the very future, the design, how it's basically going to come up itself. So in a nutshell, I'd like to highlight what we spoke about. So very small form factor designs are already being standardized since 2019. We are seeing smaller diameters of cables because conduits are basically the same. If you have to run higher density of fiber, more fiber, it's important that you have smaller diameter cables to meet the conduit and the pathway requirements. Network radix, we already saw the switch is really driving, on the switch side is really driving the 16 fiber and excess connectivity. So the existing 8 and 12 fibers will soon migrate to the 16 and the 24 fiber connectors in the future. We are seeing a lot of push in the multi-mode optics industries. While single mode continues to be the choice in terms of long distance and higher bandwidths, but multi-mode is really offering you with PAM4, with SWDM, BiDi technologies. We are seeing a higher bandwidth in the multi-mode optics itself. Again, the focus is on basically ensuring lower cost data center connectivity as well as having highest performance that is available, and that's kind of driving customers to select the next generation optics and connections from a connectivity perspective. We are seeing rapid high fiber count cable terminations. We are seeing very high density fibers in excess of 144 and 864 fibers, all the way up to 3,456 fibers in a single cable kind of densities in some of the large customers, and we are seeing growing demand locally for more and more fiber connectivity. And that's also the reason why high capacity fiber switching proliferation is going to continue to drive that market, because you are going to deploy an infrastructure which is going to support multiple active refreshes. Lastly, I would like to talk about automated infrastructure management, and this is today a standard, recognizing the need that the complexity that is going to come up in your data center cannot be managed just by merely manual documentation or manual processes that you've been having for so many years. The time has come now to really give a hard look at automated infrastructure management specifically. And so this is something which allows you to manage a fiber connectivity in and out of your data center, within your data center. It is seamlessly upgradable to intelligent connectivity management. And also it also talks about geo-mapping the infrastructures across multiple buildings in a campus layout kind of thing. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for your patient hearing and hand it back to the speakers. Thank you.
Thanks, Priyesh, for a very passionate talk on the networking piece. I think the scale what we are going to see is humongous. So sometimes scary. I mean, what kind of scale we are going to have at DC? Do you see any future impact on of the network function virtualization on the networking piece, especially in the DC?
Absolutely, sir. In fact, most of the enterprise and the cloud customers that we are seeing already are working on re-architecting their data center infrastructure requirements. So, in all three dimensions: the compute, the storage, and the networking front. So, while doing that, it's important that we need to have a seamlessly scalable or an agile data center which can support all these kind of active refreshes. So it's happening and it's real. Actually, a lot of things are happening in India itself. In that ways, India is very fast in terms of adopting to next generation technologies to make up for all the infrastructure lacuna we already have. Adoption is the only way to basically address some of the problems that we're already seeing there. Yes.
Thank you. As rightly mentioned, that quicker adoption is the way forward. Especially we have seen in last 5-6 months how fast we have adopted to new lifestyle and new working style and all. Thank you very much again, Priyesh. Our next speaker is Ms. Janab Lakdawala, who is Director Sales for Western Region for STT Global Data Centers in India. Typically, IT professionals remain passionate about making their own on-prem data centers. However, in today's dynamic and agile world, at times it is best to be remaining with safe hands and to collaborate with large and professionally managed data centers for co-location of services, which also offer a lot of great connectivity and security features. Mrs. Janab has done advanced program for marketing professional from IIM Calcutta, chiefly presenting her bites on USPs of STT data center. Over to Janab.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Manoj, for the introduction and the organizers for organizing such lovely platform. Today, I would want to capture about what's happening in the data center industry, what kind of trends that we're seeing there, and obviously as STT, what we are doing, what benefits that you get when you are engaging with enterprise-grade data center provider. Talking of which, this is the agenda which we covered. So taking the theme, going with the theme, saying that the data center of tomorrow, we will quickly see what is actually paving path for these data centers, which are next generation data centers, and to be highly efficient and scalable in nature. There are multiple things that we're seeing. The industry, because of these industries, our data center industry is also changing. The first is the 4G connectivity and the rural mobile penetration. Lot of new first-time adopters of mobile and internet users. The surge of gaming platforms, social media platforms, and OTTs have also, help us generate a lot of data, which in turn gets stored in data centers in some form or the other. The other very good initiatives by Government of India, which talks about digitalization, which we have embarrassed in some years now. With digitalization, we have seen new initiatives being rolled out by the Government of India, like Jan Dhan Yojana or eKYC, digital payments and stuff like that. Now, this obviously a vast implementation of such kind of initiatives would mean that you would need a very high compute, storage, network, and applications. Now, this all is paving path to higher data center requirements and needs, and in turn forcing the industry to come up with the next generation of data centers. Few new opportunities which we also seen in the Indian market, and this has been during the pandemic phase, when we've seen that there's a huge surge of video conferencing. The team calls and the Zoom calls have become the need of the hour today. Apart from that, we've also seen government again reforming policies like the data protection bill, MIghty. Now, this is again enabling and ensuring that the data remains in the country and hence boosting the data center industry. Remote working obviously has now become like a 100% requirement for all enterprise customers. They want 100% remote hands capabilities to be enabled for their employees. Now, all of this and obviously the new segments that we're seeing, like the e-commerce, the digital payments, all of this are really the new things that we're seeing in the market and coming up, which is again boosting the data center industry. While the data centers form the core of the overall digitalization, it is prudent for us to even see what kind of trends that are taking place in this ecosystem. We are seeing a shift from captive data centers to on-prem, from on-prem to co-location service providers. Now, obviously, this is also because data center providers are able to offer benefits like lower capex and opex, higher security levels, committed SLAs. These are some of these features which, when a customer wants to come to a data center, he gets and does not have to invest in it. At the same point in time, what we also seeing, a lot of international players are expanding in our country. So, and with that, we are also exploring new horizons. We are now seeing data center providers getting into tier 2, tier 3 kind of cities where they will have edge kind of data centers that are going to build up. Obviously, this would mean closer to customers, more data centers, and the growth is humongous. I'll quickly take a minute and just tell you where we are as India when it comes to data center and with compared to the world. You'll be surprised to know that we are currently only 2% of the world data centers. And we expect it to grow from a 2.8 billion industry to a 4.5 billion by 2025. Now, having said that, the total capacity that we would have by 22 would be around 500 megawatt, which in comparison to a US market, they added 500 megawatt just last year. So you see the gap is really huge and the potential is definitely there for us to grow. Another interesting thing is we are the second largest economy, second largest country in APAC in terms of data center growth. And we've been growing at almost 23% CAGR. So these are some of the highlights. And also with this, we can take a cue that how we are currently placed and what kind of potential do we see in this market to come. Talking of which, I will quickly now introduce STT and what we are doing in our space to ensure these requirements or demand from the customers are taken care of. So we are ST Telemedia is headquartered in Singapore. We are a completely wholly owned subsidiary of Temasek. Globally, we do about 110 data centers and 1.2 megawatt of IT load. That's the kind of capacity that we hold globally. A further glimpse in our global platform. These are the countries where we are present. So starting with India, we have 16 data centers. We are the #1 colo service provider in the market today with a 33% of revenue share. Followed by us is China, where we have 78 data centers, and we have partnered with GDS in China for these data centers. Singapore is a home ground for us, and we are the leading provider in Singapore again. We've got about 7 data centers, and we are building more. Virtus is again a 100% entity of STT, and we've got 10 data centers in UK. Again, among the top 5 fastest growing company in UK. And lastly, we have presence in Thailand. We have just launched our first phase of data center. This is in partnership with Fraser's Property that we have launched in Thailand. This is practically our growth story. We started in 2005, and when we started, we were merely telecom buildings. It was Tata Communication who had taken over from BSNL and converted those cable landing stations into data centers. So the first phase of data centers were actually nothing but telecom buildings that got converted into data center. And till today, these data centers remain very, very important data centers in the country because they hold the cable landing station and exit out of the country. Followed by that, we actually started building up new data centers, and these were greenfield projects done by us. So between 2009 and 2012, we tried understanding the infrastructure challenges that were there in the country, and we started building up rated 3 data centers, which was not really a norm that time. The standard of data center were actually brought in between this time. Further that, we realized that data center has a very high potential and a growth structure. So we look at partners who can help us invest and grow in this market. And that's when we got into partnership with STT. And we now a joint venture between STT and Tata Communication, where STT holds the major share. Just to give you a glimpse about our capabilities, we are currently present in 8 cities. In fact, we are the only one who cover the north-south, east-west border. We've got data centers in all of these directions, which enables our customer to look at redundancies, DCDRs kind of concept. In totality, 16 data centers and about 2.5 megawatt of IT load is what we do. We've been growing at 2.7x since the time we have moved as TCDC and now STT. And as I said, we hold about 33% of revenue share currently. So that's a quick view about our journey till date. This is a little more detail about our data centers. The one that you see on the left are the existing data centers where we have right now. As I said, we've covered all the 8 cities and all the 4 zones, and we've been growing. And this current capacity is about 105 megawatt. And the kind of quantum of growth that we're expecting to multiply this capacity by 2x in next 2 years. So on the right hand side of the presentation, you can see these are the cities where we are expanding: Delhi, Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, Chennai. Now, the another major shift that we are now seeing is earlier when the data centers were built, they were built for 3 megawatt, 5 megawatt, 6 megawatt kind of capacities. Now, with the new trend we're seeing, we are creating data center campuses. Like the Pune campus of ours is already a 45 megawatt IT load campus. The Ambattur again is about 30 megawatt campus. So the new data centers that we're seeing, we are now looking at 100 megawatt of IT load that we'll be supporting to our customers. Like for us, Pune has that capability of going up to 100 megawatt directly. And similarly, we are looking at few more data centers in Mumbai who can take us. We already have 3, we're adding 2 more to our list as well. So there's a huge growth that we are seeing, and the new data centers will be obviously larger in scale. So now we are seeing a range of 15 to 18 megawatt of data center that are getting constructed, vis-a-vis what we are seeing in earlier times, which was between 5 and 8 megawatt. Anybody who wants to evaluate a data center provider, I would really urge you to look at these parameters because these are the ones will give you a true understanding of how your data center provider is performing and how long he is here to stay. Data center is a deep pocket market. We need investors who need to invest and stay invested for a long period of time. Now, the first I would like to talk about financial stability. And as STT, we are since last 5 years, we've been booking profits. We've been growing at 26% of CAGR, and we already have a AA rating in terms of credit score. Now, the most important part I would call out here is the Temasek backing that we have. Temasek is a strong sponsor for us, and we will continue to grow with their support in India and expand our infrastructure. Second important point here is the tenancy risk. Now, whenever a customer look at contracting with a service provider, he gets married to the service provider for at least 10 years. That's the bare minimum time. It's a stickiness that data center industry has. Once you are in, you are there. So it is important that your service provider has the data center that is built with no tenancy risk. So for us as STT, most of our data centers are built on Tata Communications land parcels. And Tata Communication being a joint venture company with us, we actually see no tenancy risk when it comes to land parcels. The other is the delivery records. So we've been operating in this country for almost 15 years now, and we kind of understand very well in terms of what kind of requirement customer has, what kind of the timelines that they're talking about. And we've always fared well in that area. Lastly, closest to the customers that we're talking about. So as I said, we cover all the 4 zones in the country. That makes us closer to the customer. Also, if a customer is looking at DC near DR, we have got multiple data centers in the city itself that can give that kind of capabilities or options to the customer to look at. Plus a wide range of data centers between A30 they can choose for DR as well. Network rich and carrier neutral data centers. Again, this is important. All our data centers are has at least 12 service providers available for the customer to choose. This could be a mix of domestic, international, and local providers in the city. Now that gives you the flexibility of building up your redundant infrastructure. Design excellence. We have a center of excellence in Singapore. So what it does is it keeps testing on various technologies that we are working on, and then pass those information to all our data centers across the globe. Apart from that, we also conduct a lot of training sessions, standardization, industry practices that we're trying to standardize. That is all done by our Center of Excellence, which is headquartered in Singapore. Operation excellence, again, as I said, we've been operating for the last 50 years. We've seen some of the worst situations in the country. Like Chennai had witnessed, floods. Bombay had witnessed floods. We had political instability in some parts of the country. But all that having said and done, we've always been 100% uptime. So we exactly know how to operate our data centers, and that kind of reliability is what we provide you. Especially now during pandemic as well, while most of the service providers have declared that as force measure, we continue our business as usual and not really look at it as a force measure, ensuring our SLAs are not compromised and you get 100% uptime. Some of the salient features of our data center, which is obviously high quality portfolio kind of customers that we've got. They're all heavily our cream customers in the industry today. You will have a good dense of hyperscalers, OTT players, plus the BFSI segment that you see. So you find mostly all industries who have hosted with us, majorly dominating by hyperscalers and BFSI segment customers. High density racks. Gone are those days when we talk about 3 kilowatt and 4 kilowatt. We're now talking about 20 kilowatt of rack per rack density as well. So there are instances when the customers come back and said that they want a high density setup, and we've created that for them. We do understand the cooling and the power requirement, and that's why we are able to design those kind of infrastructure for our customers. And these are completely custom built design for them. Reliable power. Again, since most of our data centers are within the city itself, we've got a very clean source of power available, again, from redundant service providers. That helps in ensuring that we get a very good quality of power. From security point of view, we already practice 5 layers of security. So some of the salient features that you would look at when you're looking at a service provider, you can definitely evaluate our data centers in that lines. Talking of security, as I mentioned, we already have a 5 layer of security that we offer to our customers. This is a good combination of manned securities and a video surveillance that we do. So right from the entry to a data center to the customer rack, there are multiple layers of security one has to clear before reaching there. Apart from that, we already have a stringent norms that we follow as best practices. Like one of the best practices, if somebody wants to enter a data center or even enter a premise, they need to have a pre-authorization available for them. Otherwise, they would not get access to data centers. Even for individual racks and floor entry level access, we ensure that the customer has the right authorization and is only then he is able to enter the data center. Also, our data centers are designed in a manner that we do not really have to have maintenance activity done inside the data center. So the data center server hall is a separate hall altogether. And any maintenance activity, the entry exit of maintenance engineers happen for a different door, and he doesn't have to enter the data center at all. So that kind of ensures a really high level of security. Plus, we maintain our CCTV footages for 90 days. So that also gives you that comfort in case if you're looking at a higher surveillance level and footage availability, we can do that as well. Moving to the next slide, which is operation excellence. Now, we firmly believe in global, which is being global and having local expertise. So, as I said, customers who are in India who want to expand in multiple geographies, or customers who are in other geographies who want to enter into India or any other markets which are difficult, we can definitely enable those customers to do so, because we do have that kind of footprint and we can definitely take you to those difficult markets where you want to have your presence available. We build data centers as per global standards. So our philosophy around is that if a customer is visiting a data center in Singapore or UK or China, he should not feel any difference when it comes to India. The standards are maintained at par, and that's the idea of our center excellence team, who help us build those kind of designs. When you bring up new data centers are in line with what a customer would look at anywhere in the globe, and not really compromising any standards in the country. Again, these data centers are state-of-art data centers. They are at least rated 3 certified. We have a Gujarat data center which is rated 4 certified as well. It takes care of concurrent manageability and also takes care of high reliability as well. We've got wider connectivity options. So you look at any service provider that you want to have. We are carrier neutral, and we ensure that all service providers are available so that you can pick and choose any one of them from the list available. Again, lastly, physical security that we talk about. You've got multi-layer of physical security as well, and this ensures that the data center is highly secured and taken care of. It's the last slide on the list, which talks about the kind of awards that we have received. The interesting that I find in this slide is that while we have received multiple awards, we've also received awards in multiple categories as well, right from data center design to a data center provider of the year, to operation excellence, to the best employee of the year and stuff like that. So there are multiple categories in which we have been nominated, and we've been doing pretty well, and we've got awards for these categories. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much for giving your time and listening to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Janab, for the insightful discussion and the scale and the complexity and the security of STDC spread across country, not only in country but outside country also, and along with the multiple connectivity that is equally important. I mean, one can build DCs and all, but the connectivity and redundancy of the connectivity is extremely important. The maddening rush for the digitization and modernization of data centers, both for on-prem, for cloud-based modern data centers, need to have robust and reliable networking solution within and outside world. Our next round of speaker is Mr. Rajesh Kumar Sundarajan, who is into product management for networking framework for Altron. Rajesh carries 25 years of rich experience in datacom and telecom business in multiple domains in project management, engineering, marketing, quality control, and product management. Passionate about technology, Rajesh has been involved in many big projects for IP routing, MPLS, network access, aggregation, transport networking, industrial networking, data center networking, and now in recent years in NFA and SDN. The theme of presentation of Rajesh is connectivity and interconnectivity for cloud and modern data center. Over to Rajesh.
Rajesh, sir, I would request you to kindly unmute your mic, sir.
Honorary Secretary Ajay ji and Director Nita ji spoke about the need for efficiency, and the earlier speaker Priyesh about the need for agility. So I will be focusing on the efficiency and the agility, specifically with respect to the network within the data center. Now, some interesting facts. Worldwide, the number of data centers is actually going down, but the capacity and the expenditure are growing. Essentially, what it means is the data centers get bigger and more concentrated. And in India, like the earlier facts, etc., were mentioned, there is substantial headroom for growth, which is shown by the say a normalized one with respect to data center capacity versus the amount of mobile traffic in terabytes. So India has about 5 watts per terabyte, whereas China, our close neighbor, is 100 watts, 20 times, and the US is about say 50 times at 250 watts. And in tune with this, so there is expected substantial investment to the tune of an average of some $500 million or the equivalent of some 3,700, 3,800 crore per year over the, and this will continue over the next 10 years. Now, to make all this possible, so look at the internal of the data center, something that Priyesh had also touched on. So at the lowest, this one, you have the primary infrastructure, which is servers, networking, and storage, which are the most visible parts providing these services, supporting all the cooling, cabling, power systems, etc. Then there is a layer of heavy amount of software involvement, which brings about virtualization and automation. So virtualization by the hypervisors, which virtualize the base hardware resource. Then a lot of infrastructure management to automate the entire resource pool and present the entire data center as a single resource pool to both the administrator and finally the users. Other important things to user management, then federation with other clouds, primarily with making enormous number of applications, both hosted by the data center, also by other maybe SaaS providers, etc., through a marketplace. And this comes to customers through a service layer. Right, so that this is presented as different services, infrastructure as a service, platform, software, backup, disaster recovery. All of these can be presented as services to the users. So at the core of these, so you have the middle layer of automation, virtualization, and to make all this possible, very smart analytics, so that now the data center can stay up all the time, any issues can be proactively tackled, and growth in the data center can be appropriately planned for the most appropriate or best return on investment for the provider. And so these pillars of automation, virtualization, and analytics provide the required elasticity to treat all the resources as a single pool and with the independence of the location of individual physical resources, so that services can be delivered at speed and scale. And this makes in what is called a software-defined data center, which is agile, profitable, and scalable. Key to this, to any of these, to automation or to virtualization, and to be able to get the insightful analytics, is the connectivity, like Manoj initiated this session. So this involves connectivity within the data center, connectivity across physical locations of say one logical data center, connectivity between the data center and any external entities, like for example, a hybrid cloud which is spread across the centralized data center versus some resources on-premise at an enterprise, etc. This connectivity in the data center is a fairly mature technology. So the earlier this one mentioned about leaf and spine architecture. So there have been various architectures that have been that have evolved over time. Now more or less most data centers are consolidating around the leaf and spine architecture. Primarily, you have a lot of these servers in various in the racks, and then each rack has a top of rack switch, or so-called the leaf switch. And the leaf switches are connected together by spine switches. So this enables complete redundant connectivity, any-to-any connectivity in the shortest possible number of hops across the data center, with border leaves enabling similar agile and very quick connectivity to resources outside the data center as well. Fundamental technologies towards this are the EVPN technology for data center interconnects, and within the data center itself, BGP, etc. is heavily used for routing. And to put it all together, now with so many components, hardware and so many software intensive this ones, etc., there is a fabric manager that helps to manage and automate the connectivity. This is all fairly mature now. So what's interesting is as the network speeds grow, many previous speakers mentioned about speeds from few megabits to 100 megabits, 1 gigabit, now 10, 40, 100 gigabits, etc. These speeds keep increasing. Traditional model has been that as the speeds increase, the infrastructure, the base routers or switches needed to be upgraded. This upgrade is a costly affair, primarily because this the router or switch is a black box, with each upgrade involving both software and hardware replacement. Now this is where the so-called white box or disaggregated networking is changing things in a big way today. In the data center as well as in other industries. The base concept is just like now you can buy a bare metal PC or a computer and then download an operating system into it, and you have a functional system, operating system, other application software, etc. Bring the same concept into the data center network for the routers. So hardware ODMs, so-called ODMs, give you a base bare metal switch or router platform into which software can be downloaded. So this is an independent software called the network operating system, or the NOS software. And by just putting the two together, which is a matter of just download and install, the data center network, this one can be put together. And again, the largest cloud providers like Amazon, Microsoft, etc., have been have shown that several billions of dollars a year are saved with this kind of a model. And also that the innovation in the network, say for example, as the connectivity from a leaf spine to some other architecture or something has to change, it is much easier to change because that connectivity, that model is primarily driven by the software, which now no longer is tied to the hardware with a white box or disaggregated networking model. Now, the studies are showing that even upfront capex, there is almost a 50% saving, and then over a 5-year period, OPEX also provides a 50% saving overall. So this is a significant amount of cost efficiency that comes to data center investors. So the benefits of disaggregated networking is of course, the obvious cost savings that are seen in numbers. Then to be able to upgrade hardware independently of the software so that there is greater control, and this can be customized for the data center and the connectivity needs as required. And there is a greater leverage on the cost of the network itself. So here we bring to what is Altran's contribution into this. So there are three layers to this. One is the base for the servers or the switches and routers in the network. So provide a network operating system, a NOS, and then to manage the components in the data center, the network components, there is a fabric management software. And then a rich layer of analytics for insight and continuous improvements to the overall the network in the data center. A brief view about each of these. The NOS itself, much like you have Linux, which can be pretty much put on any different hardware manufacturer's bare metal PC or laptop to enable the system for you. So we partner with multiple ODMs so that on ready the hardware router platforms, the NOS is available with pretty much the full range of features required for a data center switch. And the uniform interfaces and the open interfaces, which are enabled by open networking, support for that allows any third-party vendors, management system, etc., to be able to easily control. So the benefits of this are now there are lots of open source tools as well that people want to try to bring in, administrators especially, to try and get more insight, to try and do things differently, to automate more, etc. All that becomes much more possible with using a white box NOS. The next this one is the management layer. So the rich management layer, which we call the SAMs, that provides for full automation, again with southbound interfaces which are open to be able to control various different routers and switches, both powered by a NOS, disaggregated NOS like Altran provides, or even other third-party routers, etc., which basically enables open networking even more. And also a very rich northbound interface, which basically fits in with OpenStack or cloud management to provide full automation in the data center. And the full automation is what enables the data center operator to offer the services in a very agile manner and at great speed. The final one here is Altran's Net Anticipate framework. So this is a rich framework with analytics which is powered by artificial intelligence and machine learning. So this provides for many different advantages in the data center. So this can be used for predictive maintenance by using the data that may be already available and to learn from it so that the current state can be assessed, and then to act and prevent using the data for various purposes. So this can be for network security or for planning and scaling the network in the most appropriate way, or for orchestration of the services within the data center in the manner that best suits the needs for agility. And primarily, all this happens from within India. So this completely enables our honorary Prime Minister Sri Modi ji's vision and articulation for Make in India, for to enable greater this one of local solutions for all our needs to scale. So that is my.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Yes. So this was the last slide, and thank you all very much for the opportunity and for the interest shown.
Rajesh, thank you for the interesting discussion. Only one question I wanted to ask it on the NFV piece. So, what is the scale which you have tested so far? Because the earlier speakers talked about 200 gigs and all. What is the scale of these white boxes? What you have tested so far?
So the white box is currently scaled to 400 gig speeds. So you can have 10G or 40G on the downlink towards the servers, and the uplinks into the network itself can be 400G.
Excellent. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Inputs are way beyond infra deployment and management of ACs. The data centers of today's world need vision and strategic framework for continuous evolution to ensure agility, scalability, reliability, maintainability, cost, and last but not the least, operational efficiencies. Our next speaker is Mr. Dhaval Joshi, Vice President, Strategy and Consulting, Panamax Incorporation. A qualified software engineer, management practitioner, entrepreneur, Dhaval is equipped with wide-scale industry experience of DC, cloud, ERP, and consulting industry. Dhaval, over to Mr. Dhaval.
Thank you, Manoj ji. First of all, I would like to thank Bharat Exhibition to provide us such an opportunity. And I would also like to thank all the guests as well as the dignitary moderator Manoj ji, as well as the speakers. And obviously the audience who is listening to us. I am representing the entire Bankai group, and I am representing Panamax, which is the technological arm of Bankai group, as a global vice president. I'll be talking first about the basic roadmap which we have followed since last 30 years as a Bankai group in various technological divisions. And then I'll be moving towards today's topic, which is the future of data centers. So if I talk about Bankai Group was established 30 years back. And after the growth story of multiple segments, we have reached up to the revenue of 600 millions. Inception as the core company from telecom industry, we are providing the interconnection between 2,500 plus carriers with our 500 plus global workforce working across globe with 12 plus different physical locations and with prominent client across industries. If I talk about our journey, we have started in 1989 as an electronic push button provider and incepted as a sole technological company with various segments into it, starting from telecom related services, wholesale related retail chain, being a company into fintech sector, and currently we are into core consulting domain as master system integrator. So this is our journey so far. If I talk about various vertical where we are operating, as I've earlier mentioned, we have started as a telecom sector company and we are quite mature in the market of US, Africa and Indian region for the same since last 30 years. In fintech industry, we have been serving since last 20 plus years and we do have quite mature product range out there. In consulting domain, specifically as we are talking about data centers today, in consulting domain, we are working as master system integrator. We are also providing the services in terms of business consulting. So we can emphasize on in what direction India is going, in what sort of potential India is having in terms of the industry for data center. We are into cloud and data center as well. As the previous speaker mentioned, that currently market industry is moving towards the hybrid approach of cloud as well as the data center instead of the traditional data center strategies. We are investing a lot into that. We do have tier 2, tier 3 data centers available with us where we are hosting the technology for our clients from various industry segments, starting from banking, telecom industry, as well as various digital platforms. So these are the major factors where we are investing. Being initially in the morning session, someone mentioned when we are talking about data center industry, you should have deep pockets and greater cash flow. We are investing into research and development in new technologies for India, and to reach towards the edge computing, we are heavily investing in blockchain as well. So this is about the basic verticals which Bankai possess. Starting towards Panamax, Panamax is the technological arm of Bankai Group, which is a CMM level 5 company with multiple accreditations of ISOs. If I talk about our facts, we are working as master system integrator and sole technology provider. We are partner of 9 well-known equipped OEMs with 120 plus enterprise and public deployment with more than 100 million plus fintech transaction processors. Apart from that, we do have 40 plus global mobile wallets which are operating across globe. If you will look at the services which we are providing as Panamax Consulting, we do have our product range for multiple technological domain where we do generate the licensing revenue out of it. We are working as system integrator and providing the entire solution starting from the business consulting to the deployment of it. We do have the annual maintenance revenue from the support and maintenance contract from multiple organizations. We are into hosted service as we do have our own data centers across India, and we are also acting as the managed service providers for multiple telecom companies. So this was basic introduction to Bankai Group. If you will look at the next slides, you can see at the prominent clients we are having, how our clients are providing us the testimonials in terms of our dedication. These are few awards which we have grabbed across few years globally, which is also providing our footprint and our expertise in multiple industry segments. So let me jump towards the topic of today, which is the future of the data centers. Now, till now, we have heard many of the speakers and which we are discussing about the technology which can enhance the future of the data center. How India can be a major player using the ecosystem which currently India is having to move towards the next generation of data center. But when we are talking about future, we should also think about what learning we had from past. Okay, so I will start with the history of data center, how they have evolved and on which direction they are going. From the public data available, again, this is a debatable topic, but the public data available says during 1940s, the first data center was introduced as ENIAC, which was introduced by US for numerical computation. And after that particular inception, during early 60s, the vacuum tube started placed to store the data, and large size of rooms were created to store the data in terms of data center for smaller size of data. Then during early 70s, the Chase Bank has introduced the ArcNet with the speed of 2 Mbps to get and put back their data into the data tubes. And there, the actual business synergies came into picture that yes, this is the industry which can grow. But in early 80s, the PCs were introduced, and again there was an era which was saying that there are chances that this industry might not grow more. But proving that wrong, the era of early 90s, with the boom of .com and internet, the data industry started growing as never before. As we all know, in early 2000, AWS came up with multiple sort of option for client subscription model, and the data center became easy accessible for everyone. So this was the history of data center, and using this history, we had a learning using which multiple organization came into picture as a commercial industrialist into data center sector. Now, if we will look at the data centers today, how we are envisioning a data center, if you will ask a common man or a normal person, he will see that, okay, if you would like to establish a data center, we need proper network. And currently we are at the age where we are having the fiber network available. We need proper cooling for the servers and racks which are available with the data center. The data center should be energy efficient and using the renewable sources of energy or renewable product in terms of electrification. And for storage, we are generally using hard disk drive and evaluating towards the innovation part of it. Now, if you will look at why the industrialists should invest in this particular sector, when I'm talking about investment, this is the investment from the resource point of view, the skill development point of view, the segment point of view from the industry, and the readiness point of view as a country. Okay, if you will look at the market prediction of data center industry since 2016 to 2023, worldwide it is growing an average compound growth rate of 14%, and it is predicted to be 63 billion by 2023. Now, when we are talking about this particular size of opportunity, having the proper ecosystem in place, why should India be behind everyone? We should take this opportunity as a global market capturer and move ahead. Now, we have heard multiple people saying that yes, India is second largest ecosystem for in Asia to provide the infrastructure and all the raw material which is required for creating a data center. But still, if you will look at the growth, we are at 5.5%. In spite of having a large opportunity scale out here. So we should think about the direction here as well. And government is always supporting us, so we should abide to the policy. If you have heard the previous speaker from BSNL as well as MITI, they have said that they are coming up with, they are always open for the industries to join hand and grow the nation together. So we should also think on those directions and grow our country in terms of this business. If you will look at an independent research, we are nearly, quite near to the US region in terms of upcoming market growth till 2025 for this particular industry. So again, this is what I am emphasizing, that we should be thinking about the same. Now, as we were talking about today, and we know that this is the growth which is coming from the industry, we should be thinking about tomorrow. Now, when I'm talking about tomorrow, I'm not talking about far future. We should be ready in near future in terms of few things, and many bigger organizations or good players are already working on those aspects. When we are talking about the data center of tomorrow, generally the companies or bigger organizations are preferring the cool, stable climate for the data centers. They are also, there are few research organizations who are also trying to keep their data center on the poles, even under the sea. The structure currently are becoming, instead of heavy racks, larger buildings, they are moving towards the hybrid approach of small and large sort of data center with energy efficiency. If you have heard few speakers, we have started talking on megawatt instead of size of the data center. So these are the current future, near future, where industry is investing, and we should think about those aspects as well. If I move to the next near future data center, currently heavily invested technology of the data center is hyperscale data center. An independent research from Cisco is saying that in 2015 they have invested in 259 data center, and they are planning to move it ahead to 628 global data centers, which are hyperscale data center. So when we are discussing about hyperscale data center and cloud, we should think about the global approach, which Mr. Gulam has emphasized on, that we should think about an hybrid approach, being a small size organization that, yeah, we can utilize the subscription model, and apart from that, we can utilize the power of hyperscale that will always provide you better service, and again, you can move ahead with the better technological aspect. Now, where we were, we have seen that. Where we are, we have seen that. Now let us talk about future, where the data center industry is heading towards. If we will talk about the future, then again, we are thinking about very small size in terms of location. We are talking about edge computing and the distributed computing to come closer towards the edge computing. Now, to reach at that level, we should invest on multiple distributed computing technology. Being Panamex, we are heavily investing in blockchain here. If you will look at the reusing of excess head, there are n number of research which has been published recently by multiple large-scale organizations towards this. And this is the way forward, because people always would like to have, I mean, starting from government, the authorized body, the legislative bodies always want that their data should be nearer to them instead of spreading across anywhere. It shouldn't be centralized. Any climate calamity or any change shouldn't destroy their data, and it should always be secured enough. And that's why the technology of edge computing and distributed computing is the future. Now, when we are talking about why we should think about the future from now, it is not only about investing money into the data center. It is not only about investing the money into the infrastructure. It is about where we are moving towards, and are we ready for the same? If you will look at the statistics which has been published by Gartner and few well-known organizations, by 2025, the world will be having 175 zettabyte of data. Are we ready to actually process that? Are we ready to actually store that? I think you as a listener or you as a speaker should be aware that, yes, what is the answer here and how we should evolve to handle such sort of situation. Okay, same is the case when, if you will look at, it is not only about creating a data center, it is not only about creating an infrastructure, it is about creating the passive components behind it. You should have proper telecom infrastructure, you should have proper networking infrastructure, you should have multiple things in place to handle these aspects. So let me jump on to the next slide. Are you actually ready? So if you will look at the challenges, there are majorly three challenges which organizations are facing and will be facing to adapt these changes in future. One is the lack of readiness in upgrade to this data center. Second is the infrastructure challenge, and third is the staffing challenge. Now, when we are talking about the readiness, 29% of the leaders in the market are saying that, I mean, this is an independent survey by Forbes, and 29% of the market leaders are saying that, okay, my data center is ready. But when it actually comes to the readiness, are they actually ready? You can see the breakdown of largest provider in world. And still being a small organization, if you will say that, yes, you are ready, then this is not the right answer. You should be ready in terms of skill set, you should be ready in terms of infrastructure, and you should be ready in terms of the future development. Again, this is the same question. Sure. 32% of the leaders are saying that, yes, my infrastructure will be self-healing by 2025. So when we are talking about self-healing, is it the thing where we are going towards the machine era? No, we need to develop the skill towards the development of infrastructure and its research instead of handling the infrastructure. That's what I wanted to emphasize over here. And the next one is about the skill development. When we are talking about new technology, new research, and new enhancement, do we have those skill sets available? This is not the thing which only an organization or only an investor can do. It is an activity of joint hand, starting from educational institution, skill development programs of organization, and research institution. We can jointly achieve that okay, if we are reducing the staffing in maintenance, then the skill development should be there towards research and towards the development of these sort of technology, and then only we will be able to achieve what we are emphasizing for India. So this was majorly what I wanted to cover. Being Panamax, we are investing heavily into research and development in this sector. If you have any queries related to that, please feel free to get in touch with us. I'm open for the question. Thank you for the opportunity, everyone. Manoj ji, I think you're on mute.
You need to unmute your mic, sir.
Sorry. Thank you, Dhaval, for the your bites on the preparedness and the scale what we are talking about. The Digital India is a vision which can be realized through various digitization programs of society. The digital transformation, being a journey, always requires focus, vision, investments in infra. The next panelist, Mr. Amarjit Gupta, is a high-tech global professional considered with IT and telecom domains for last 25 plus years and a passionate believer in the role of technology in changing lives in emerging economies. He is working with a US-based private equity firm, Squared Capital, as their CEO and MD for digital infra investment in India in Lightstorm Telecom Ventures Private Limited. He has worked as MD, CEO, and country head with large tech giants like Juniper, Microsoft, Alcatel-Lucent, and Motorola. An electronics engineer from REC Nagpur with advanced management from XLRI and Cornell University. Amarjit is also a part-time angel investor who has worked with the youngsters in emerging areas like cybersecurity and wireless analytics. He is considered as industry thought leader and has been involved in many policy decisions and tech advocacy in government, industry, and media forums. He will be sharing his bites on cloud networking connectivity. Over to Amarjit.
Thank you, Manoj. Thank you, exhibition. Thank you, Shashi and team, for inviting me to speak. And I'm aware that we are running late, so it is good that I haven't prepared any PowerPoints to present. And so what I'm going to focus on is, I think, get a little bit of a reality check of what we as an industry need to do. And I'll save myself of advertising for Lightstorm, which I think we can do later. So the reality is as follows, folks. There are 800 million users of internet in India. There are 500 million internet users in China, and there are 300 million internet users in US. Okay. Now there is about 200,000 square meters of data center capacity in India. There is about 2 million square meters of data center capacity in China, and there is about 17 million square meters of data center capacity in US. My colleague from STT referred there's about 200 megawatts of data center capacity installed. So let's just do some rough commonsensical math. To be able to cater to 500 million internet users with a quality grade which is international class, which is just about the same size of the internet market in US, you need to multiply your data center capacity by about 20 times. 20 times of 200 megawatts that you have today. Last I knew, 1 megawatt of capacity tax takes about $5 million to install, including land, roughly. So there's been about $1 billion of investment on ground, and you got to multiply it by 20 times. So essentially, what are we talking of? To be able to reach to a nominal scale of giving quality data center services to all our hungry young friends on internet, you have to put in $20 billion of co-location capacity in this country, of which about 1 billion is already on the ground. I know in the initial session, Manoj Paul from GPX spoke. It's a very welcome trend. He's built a property which was immensely valuable. It met all the technical specs, and it's got a fantastic investment from Equinix 3 months back, about $165 million. But $165 million doesn't cut it. We need 20. Okay, so that's the problem we are staring on the ground. Now let me talk about trends before we build a modern data center. When the data centers in India were built, they were built was when enterprises didn't know what was hybrid. At the best, they knew about putting some in-prem servers back in a space called colo because they were running out of space. Okay, the usage of internet was nowhere, as in B2C applications, gaming, video gaming, Netflix, was nowhere as proliferate to what it was when the data centers were built. So these two strands actually have broken the data center infrastructure, in my opinion, down by the seams for them to be able to meet the exploding demands. And they manifest itself in many ways. Many of the speakers spoke to it. You got to build connectivity around these data centers. You got to spread your reach, and you have to do all the good things, including being able to talk about the infrastructure in an integrated manner. Now, how do you do it? On one hand, you have, I explained to you the data center ecosystem is $1 billion investment, starving for another $19 billion of cash to be able to move up to datum levels. And by the way, that's not easy to come, right? That's not easy to come. And on the other hand, connectivity is provided by the telecom industry. And we all read in the papers of what is the status of the telecom industry, which has its own large problems. They have order of magnitude investments about 100 times, which is under pressure from many sides rather than to solve data center connectivity as a priority. So I think the speakers talked about it. It's time for the industry to collate in a carriers neutral manner in which data center specialists and all the young friends on this panel need to specialize in being able to build out this capacity to come near to international standards. We talk about the cheapest rates in India, both for data center as well as connectivity. But many of my young friends will tell you that when you adjust not to purchase power parity, when you adjust to quality, we are the highest rate, even higher than Bangladesh or Sri Lanka. All right. So that's the paradigm which is being solved. And I know many boardrooms in the US, particularly the large data owners, are beginning to look at that lens in that manner. So from that sense, it's a very exciting point for all of us in the industry to be working together, as long as we focus on the competencies and interwork with each other to make the ecosystem gel in India, which is really what this industry needs. So I vouch for a case of a carrier neutral data centers who really double down, people like STTs, GPX and others, double down in building mega scale. 200 megawatts is nothing, in the international scope. The fund, by the way, by way of introduction, we represent a fund which specializes in infrastructure and have been focusing on digital infrastructure for about last 2 years. And over the last 2 years, we have built 2 large assets, both telecom and data center across the globe. One in Europe, which covers about 29 countries, about 129,000 kilometers of fiber, 8 data centers, including a transatlantic cable from Europe to US called GTT. The other in Hong Kong called HGC Communication. And as we speak, stay tuned. We are building out what we think is a vacancy in the marketplace, which is a bespoke connectivity for data centers only. The problem in India with connectivity is most of the connectivity is built for telecom providers, barring for, I know, Mr. Tandon's company in Railtel, which is not the same. But most fiber is designed for mobile base stations. They're not designed for data centers or internet usage, which have different characteristics of latency, availability, linearity, programmability. I know there are people who are talking over here talking about software-based data centers, which do not exist in these monolithic pipes and have never really worked even in the West. So the vacancy for a carrier-neutral data center to build large capacities and carrier-neutral fiber companies, which is what, by the way, Lightstorm is trying to do in India. And hopefully within a year or so, you'll see more on the ground. We are trying to hold back some announcements. We're building in on the back of very large pre-bookings from very large data providers globally who kind of have already booked us to be able to build something which we are rolling out over the next 1 year. So I think it's a very opportune time. I am quite aware that we are running behind time. I agree with most of what my other panelist says, but I think as a market, as a nation which has got so much of a data opportunity, I think it's time for us to rise to the occasion, play to our strengths, and complement each other to break this stranglehold, which otherwise will be a very good story of the number of users and so on and so forth, but not necessarily one which is reputed for its market. So very good participating in this panel. Shashi and Manoj, thanks for inviting me over, and happy to take questions or clarifications either online or offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Avijit, for the 3-4 discussions, unlike the other participants who had presentations and all. COVID forced people to work from boundaryless offices. The perimeter security framework won't protect the data and data centers from security attacks in view of distributed and widespread work environments, what we have seen in recent times. Security attacks have increased multiple times in the last 7-8 months due to ill preparedness of enterprises. Our next panelist is Dr. Chinmay Hegde, who is a subject matter expert in the area of smart things and cybersecurity with experience of 19+ years experience in industry. He worked for global security giants such as McAfee, Symantec, and Cisco. He is now MD of Estricos Consulting Private Limited, a strategic consulting expert organization for smart cities, smart infra, and security in India. Dr. Hegde possesses intellectual property in the area of security analytics, compliances, and enforcement. He also champions the global smart city IoT security framework, on which he has presented several papers and published in many international journals. Dr. Hegde will be presenting these inputs on unified operation and KPI management of data centers. Over to Dr. Hegde.
Thank you, Mr. Tandon, and thank you, fellow panelists and speakers of the first session, for such an enlightening overall session throughout the period of this conference. And I am going to touch upon a particular point where everybody else has spoken so far about.
Before Chinmay gets into Chinmay,
Yes.
Before Chinmay starts, I want to congratulate Chinmay for going Belgavi Smart City online, and next month PM will be inaugurating the Namchi Smart City. Congrats, Chinmay, for a fantastic job you have done in the smart city.
Thanks a lot. So when all the fellow panelists have spoken about how to scale up the capacity and how to build more and more data centers across the country to elevate the capacity of the data center capacity in the country, right? So I am going to touch upon a point that maybe how can we also complement in terms of conserving certain infrastructural requirements, and then how can we make it more sustainable over the period of long time. So that's my attention here. So that's where my concentration has been on the unified operations and KPI management using the data analytics or machine learning and such kind of technologies, which is most of a software driven technology for the data centers infrastructure. So moving on to introduce what we do is Estricos is actually a smart infrastructure technological company where we also start with consulting, implementation, as well as in terms of developing product lines for the smart any infrastructure to make it a smart infrastructure. That's the goal. So out of that we address various areas where we have been into the business for last approximately 4 years. This is the 4th year. We are 4-year young organization. So where we have grown significantly over the period of time, and we have built some of the product lines as we move on in terms of the artificial intelligence and machine learning related areas. So our footprints across the country, of course, we have worked overseas, and in India, as right now Shashiji said, we are working quite closely and in implementation of both data centers as well as the command centers for the unified operations of smart cities, industrial parks, and the data centers also. So Namchi Smart City, which is going to go live next month, and Honorable Prime Minister of India is going to inaugurated, and Belgavi Smart City, which has gone live in the month of October, and some other smart cities like Aligarh, PCMC, and Gangtok. And we also cater to some of the industrial customers. And we already have a platform cooperativism with the global leader of the unified operations, that is Aviva, which is a Schneider Electric company. So where our platform, which is smart interop and analytical platform, has a cooperative with their platform, and we cater to the global market and also for the global data centers, which is the right now, the in thing. Well, so infrastructural relevance overall, and especially the focus to the data centers. What is the key driver for any infrastructure to make it more efficient? One is energy management, that is supporting the sustainability goals and safety regulations, because we need to be compliant always, and operational efficiency, where we want to cut down the operational cost on spent on the infrastructure. Similarly, decision support system. Decision support system, when I say, it is mainly the informed decision support system. So how do we get that information? That is what we are going to talk about it in this particular session. So the key drivers for the data centers are especially the SLAs, operations, and how to cut down the downtimes, and how to cut down the accidental downtimes more of. For that, we need the information to be correlated, and certain kind of analytics to be driven towards the operational excellence. So a study on another aspect is data center energy efficiency or data center energy consumption. So the studies say that the cooling consumes 25 to 33% of the power. However, everybody's concentration is supplying the power or the managing the power capacity towards the revenue earning segment. But the irony is, we spend a lot in support systems. We spend a lot of power in support systems, which is approximately about 70% of it. Only 30% of the power capacity that generates the revenue for the data center organizations. So even in that, there is a granular study which says that compute actually consumes a lot of power, that is around 10 to 15% of total data centers power capacity. So some illustrations I want to take to explanation in this particular session is, how do we do it? We need to pay attention to the hindsight, pay attention to the foresight, and also without ignoring the current insights. So that's the idea. How can we do it? Is the respective process map out here explains that first identify the infrastructure profile and guidance on the standardization, because we need to get the guidance on the standardization, such as peers certifications, or it can be ISO energy management certifications or sustainability certifications, and all these things we need to have the guidance about it. Similarly, define the KPIs and dependency matrix, which is quite important for any infrastructure, where the dependency matrix, the KPIs, each KPI depends on each other KPI. How do we find that out? And sorry, I moved on. Yeah, and machine learning driven standard KPI analytics, which is what we do, and machine prescribed advisories, remedies, as well as automation of the deployment, and analytics driven self-assessment of the standards. Where are we today in terms of the standards? If I have to be LEED certified data center, right, or the data center infrastructure, where am I? That is what is going to be the major pain point for the data center operations team. And another issue is transparency to the customers, because customers want transparency, because they are the ultimate beneficiaries of the data centers, where they will be either taking a slice of the data center, or they will bring in their assets into the data center, right? So how to achieve the operational excellence overall, and how to give the transparency to the customers. So moving on, the just elucidating on the infrastructural aspect, I'm taking an example of energy efficiency as the aspect, where facility infra, there are 4 pillars overall. What you see on your screen is, one is the facility infra, second one is IT network layer, next racks and PDUs and such kind of assets, and then comes the compute and storage. Let me take an example of a few particular KPIs which are very famous: PUE, DCE, and DCI. So data center infrastructure efficiency, which is dependent on 3 more KPIs which are in the layer 3, right? So the layer 4 has a dependency on layer 3. Now, similarly, there is another KPI which is in layer 4, that is PUE, which is dependent on DCI, and also it is based on the layer 2 KPI, which is power density efficiency, right? So now overall, what we see, there is a lot of dependency across the various segments. Now the vendors of the data center infrastructure equipment may not be able to concentrate on each of them. If you go to the operational technology vendors, that is CRAC, CRH, or UPS, or power systems or cooling systems vendors, they would only look at the layer 4, that is facility infra. They may not be looking at the IT network layer, right? So IT network layer, if you go to the IT players of the data center, they would only look at the IT network layer and the compute layer. They will not look at the facility infra or the rack and PDU layer. So that's a major issue. So how do we solve it? So this is again an infrastructure, power and cooling infrastructure of the data center, and also here what we see is the compute infrastructure of the data center, where the event logs are generated in each of the elements out here. And what do we do with these event logs is, we do Astrigos actually aggregates, correlates, and analyzes, and then we bring in some kind of intelligence and provide it to the operation team for taking certain kind of an actions. How do we do that is here. This is some simple data which is generated, which we use to do the data analytics and do some kind of a prediction or prescriptional analytics. There are so many KPIs when you take a data center infrastructure for an example. So PUE is dependent on DCIE, and ultimately the efficiency is dependent on the performance of each of these KPIs, right? So similarly, we can have 30 plus energy KPIs. Like this, we have another 20 to 25 different cooling KPIs and infrastructure capacity management KPIs, and also the financial or cost impact KPIs. All of these KPIs performance boil down to the dollar, that is money, because what is spent on that. And also another intangible goal of a carbon footprint or the energy consumption. So how can we innovate it? We innovate by means of providing a digital twin based exploration facility for the granular KPIs, and using the digital twin, you can go to each of your data centers corner, and then you can explore the granular KPIs and performance of the key performance indicators out there. And what do we do with that? We throw certain kind of advisory alarms, which is a system driven, and the system has a lot of proprietary machine learning models which generate all these advisory actions, using which we can take certain actions, because information is useless without an appropriate action backed up by that, right? So we need to collect the information and we need to put back into the action. So how do we put back into the action? We can raise the work order for the asset management, we can raise the workflows, we can create the policy for the device and equipment control overall, or we can create a hybrid model of mix and match of all these three. And similarly, do always an audit or the self-assessment. Where are you in terms of global standards? Where are the data centers according to the global standards? The platform also helps to do those. For all these standards, what you see is the tier standards. Where am I today? Okay, if I have some kind of issues, what are those issues, the deviations, and what do I need to do to correct that and become the certified? Maybe I'm at 2 today, I want to go to 3. How can I do that? So that is the guidance. And similarly, LEED and WELL certifications or energy management certifications, sustainability certifications, green data center certifications overall. And also we induce bidirectional implementation by means of bidirectional control over the equipments. So that's in a nutshell what we do and what is the concept about. Hope I have not rushed through. If anybody has any questions, please feel free.
Thanks, Dr. Gray. I think we are putting on very good climate. I mean, the passionate presentation discussion about Dr. Hegde was very, very good. It was very diverse, very different from the rest of the presentations. So thank you once more on this, Dr. Hegde. Thanks to all participants and presenters for quite insightful discussions and bites on the veracity, velocity, and volume of data centers, what we are talking about. I'm sure the data centers will be the new digital factory of fourth industrial revolution. The marching into fourth industrial revolution, more novel options like mini data centers or maybe edge data centers would be required. And the large data centers may not be the ideal approach, although it depends on the use case to use case. The proliferation has to be across the geography. What we have seen a few days back on the collapse of the entire system of one of the largest OTT players in the world. So I think everybody is going through a transition. Everybody is going through a learning cycle, and we are all still into the transformation phase. The deliberations can never be completed in such short discussion, but we had very, very interactful and the insightful discussion what we had in last 1.5 hours. With this, we are reaching to conclusion of this particular session of data center. The floor is now open for FAQs if somebody wants to ask any question.
Thank you, Manojji, for moderating this session. As I said in the starting that Manojji does his session very thoroughly, doing all the homeworks. So once again, Manojji, thank you very much for moderating this session. Maybe Manojji and Chinmay can take, Chinmay wanted to do a POC on the RailTel data center. Maybe you can talk to Manojji separately for that, Chinmay. And I will also connect with all the speakers. You are already connected anyway. So when Dhaval Joshi ji next time in Delhi, we'll make sure that to meet Manoj ji in his next visit.
Sure.
Having said that, I would like to thank the chief guest, all the inaugural speakers, moderator, speaker of this session, all the partners who supported this event, and nevertheless, 272 plus delegates was online today, attending this session on the 7th edition of DC. And I would also like to thank my team who has done a fantastic job. They have done on the back of all this is all the team of BE, Bharat Exhibition team, who works on day and night to make this event successful. I would like to also congratulate and thanks Yellow Spree Technologies, which is incubated at Gujarat Technology University, who provided this platform today. Well done, the team of Yellow Spree. Few things here and there I will come back to you on one-to-one. And special thanks to Menka, who's moderating here, helping us from the back end. Once again, thank you for all the partners, speakers, chief guest, guest of honors, delegates. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Be safe and happy Christmas in advance and in New Year. Thank you so much.
Good day to you all.
Thank you.